I sat across from my 6-year-old nephew, watching him push peas around his plate with unusual intensity. It was Thanksgiving dinner, and the house was filled with the warm chaos of family gathering together after months apart. But something felt wrong. "Oliver, buddy, you haven't eaten much," I said gently. He looked up at me with those big gray eyes, and for a moment I saw something that made my chest tighten. Fear. Pure, unmistakable fear. "I'm not hungry, Uncle James," he whispered. My sister-in-law, Patricia, immediately chimed in from across the table. "He's just being difficult today. You know how kids are." She laughed, that high, brittle laugh I'd been hearing more often lately, always wanting attention. I studied Oliver's face. He wasn't being difficult. He was terrified. My brother Marcus, Oliver's father, didn't even look up from his phone. "Eat your dinner, Oliver. We don't waste food in this house." The boy flinched, actually flinched, at his father's voice. "I'm a family physician in Toronto. I've been trained to spot the signs. But when it's your own family, your own brother's child, you want to believe you're wrong. You want to believe there's another explanation." After dinner, I found Oliver sitting alone in the den, staring at the wall. "Hey, buddy, want to play that racing game you showed me last time?" He shook his head without looking at me. I sat down beside him on the couch. "Oliver, is everything okay at home?" His small body went rigid. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, barely audible, "The basement hurts me." My blood ran cold. "What did you say?" "The basement," he repeated, his voice trembling. "It hurts me when Daddy takes me there." I felt the room tilt. "Oliver, what happens in the basement?" Tears started streaming down his cheeks. "I can't tell. Daddy said terrible things happen to boys who tell secrets. He said Mommy would go away forever if I told." Patricia called from the kitchen. "Oliver, time to go home, sweetie." The boy's entire body started shaking. "Please, Uncle James. Please don't make me go." I pulled him close, my mind racing. "It's okay. You're safe right now. I've got you." Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Come on, sport. Let's go home." "Actually, I was thinking Oliver could stay over tonight," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We could have a guys' night. Play some games. Watch movies." My brother's expression hardened. "He has school tomorrow. He needs his routine." "It's the weekend, Marcus. Patricia has his clothes, his toothbrush. Everything he needs is at home." The way he said home made it sound like a prison. "I can run by a store," I insisted. "Come on. We used to do this all the time when we were kids. Remember? You'd stay at Uncle Frank's, and we'd—" "No," Marcus said firmly. "Oliver comes home with us. Now." Patricia appeared beside him, that fake smile plastered on her face. "James, really, you're being silly. He's fine. Aren't you fine, Oliver?" The boy wouldn't look at any of us. He just stared at the floor, his small shoulders hunched in defeat. I wanted to fight harder. God, I wanted to physically prevent them from leaving. But I had no legal grounds, no proof. Just a child's cryptic statement, and my own growing dread. I watched them drive away. Oliver's pale face pressed against the rear window, and I knew I couldn't wait until I had perfect evidence. That little boy was in danger. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Oliver's voice. "The basement hurts me." At 2 in the morning, I found myself Googling signs of child abuse. Everything I read made my stomach turn. Unexplained fear of specific places, regression in behavior, reluctance to go home, flinching at sudden movements. Oliver had shown all of these signs. How had I missed them? I thought back over the past year, how Marcus and Patricia had become increasingly isolated from the family, how Patricia always had an excuse for why we couldn't visit their home, how Oliver had changed from a bubbly, talkative child to this withdrawn, frightened shadow. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I was going to that house, and I was going to find out what was happening in that basement. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. I knew Marcus was a financial analyst who spent long hours at his downtown office. Patricia worked part-time at a dental clinic, usually from 8 to noon on Mondays. At 8:30, I watched from my car as Patricia's vehicle left their driveway in the suburban neighborhood of Mississauga. Oliver would be at school. The house should be empty. I'd been to their home maybe 3 times in the past 2 years. Each visit had been brief, tense, and carefully controlled. They'd never given me a tour, never let me wander. The basement door had always been closed, and when I'd once asked what was down there, Marcus had said simply, storage, nothing interesting. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, making sure the coast was clear. Then I walked up to their front door and used the key hidden under a fake rock in the garden. Marcus had shown me that hiding spot years ago, back when he still trusted me, back before whatever darkness had taken root in his life. The house was silent, immaculately clean, almost sterile, the kind of clean that felt obsessive, like someone scrubbing away evidence. I found the basement door in the kitchen. It was locked. Not with a simple door handle lock, but with a deadbolt that required a key. Why would you deadbolt a basement door from the outside? What were you keeping people out of? Or what were you keeping locked in? I searched the kitchen drawers, the key hooks by the door, the ceramic bowl on the counter. Nothing. Then I checked the freezer, an old trick from my teenage years, when Marcus used to hide things. There, in a sealed plastic bag beneath frozen vegetables, I found a key ring with 2 keys. My hands trembled as I unlocked the deadbolt. The basement stairs creaked as I descended. The air smelled wrong, stale and chemical, with an underlying scent of something I couldn't identify. I flipped the light switch. What I saw made my knees buckle. The basement had been converted into a windowless room. There was a small wooden chair in the center, child-sized, with straps attached to the arms and legs. A tripod stood in the corner with a camera mounted on it. The walls were covered with soundproofing foam. On a table against the wall, there were zip ties, rope, and a collection of items I couldn't even process. My medical training kicked in, the clinical part of my brain cataloging everything, even as my emotional self wanted to vomit. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and started taking pictures. Every angle, every detail. The chair, the camera, the table, the soundproofing. Then I saw the filing cabinet in the corner. The first drawer was locked, but the key from the freezer opened it easily. Inside were dozens of folders, meticulously organized and labeled with dates going back 3 years. 3 years. Oliver had just turned 6. I pulled out the most recent folder. Inside were photographs, videos on thumb drives, documents that made me want to set the entire house on fire. My brother had been systematically abusing his own son, documenting it, and from the dates and details I was seeing, he'd been doing this for years. I photographed everything. My hands were shaking so badly I had to take multiple shots to ensure they were clear. Then I carefully returned everything to its place. I needed more than photographs. I needed the originals, evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I grabbed the most recent folder and 2 of the thumb drives, shoving them into my jacket. Then I relocked everything and made my way upstairs. As I reached the kitchen, I heard a car door slam. My heart stopped. Through the window, I could see Patricia's vehicle in the driveway. I'd been so focused on the basement that I'd lost track of time. She must have only worked a half shift. I barely had time to relock the basement door and return the keys to the freezer before I heard her key in the front door. Hello? Who's there? I stepped out from the kitchen, forcing my expression into something casual. Hey, Patricia. It's just me. James. Her face went from alarmed to carefully neutral. James. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by. See if you wanted to grab coffee. The lie came surprisingly easily. I knocked, but nobody answered. The door was unlocked, so I just came in. Hope that's okay. Her eyes were cold, calculating. The door was unlocked? Yeah. Must have forgotten to lock it this morning. I never forget to lock the door. She moved closer, studying my face. What were you really doing here, James? I told you. I wanted to see if you were home. In the middle of a workday? When you know I'm usually at the clinic? I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite my racing heart. I took a personal day. Been feeling stressed. Thought family time might help. She didn't believe me. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, the way her fingers clenched around her purse strap. I should go, I said. Clearly this is a bad time. Yes, she said slowly. You should go. I walked past her toward the door, feeling her eyes boring into my back. The folder and thumb drives felt like they were burning through my jacket. James, she called as I reached for the door handle. I turned. Don't come back here uninvited. Marcus wouldn't like it. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a threat. I drove straight to the nearest police station, my entire body shaking with adrenaline and rage. The evidence in my jacket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The officer at the front desk looked bored until I said the words child abuse and evidence. Then everything moved very quickly. I was taken to a small interview room where I met Detective Sarah Chen, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Talk me through everything," she said, pulling out a recording device. I told her about Thanksgiving dinner, about Oliver's statement, about the basement, about what I'd found. When I handed her the folder and thumb drives, her expression hardened. "Mr. Morrison, you obtained this through illegal entry. I know that could make it inadmissible in court. I don't care about court right now. I care about getting that boy somewhere safe. Look at what's in there and tell me I was wrong to get it." She pulled on latex gloves and opened the folder. I watched her face change as she looked through the contents. The professional mask slipped, revealing fury underneath. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "There's more in the basement," I said. "Much more. The filing cabinet has folders going back years." She closed the folder carefully and looked at me. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Morrison. What you did could compromise this entire case. Defense attorneys dream of evidence obtained this way. But you believe me. Believing you and being able to prosecute are two different things." She stood up. "Wait here. I need to make some calls." The next 3 hours were a blur. More detectives arrived. I gave my statement over and over. They asked about Marcus, about Patricia, about any history of violence or suspicious behavior. I told them everything. About how Marcus had changed after Oliver was born, how he'd become controlling, isolated, how Patricia seemed terrified of him, always walking on eggshells, how they'd cut themselves off from extended family. "Has Oliver ever disclosed abuse to anyone else?" Detective Chen asked. "Not that I know of. But I'm a doctor. I see how these things work. Abusers are experts at isolation and control. They make victims believe that telling will make things worse, that they'll lose everything." She nodded grimly. "Your brother is a very sick man, Mr. Morrison. He's not sick. Sick people can't help themselves. What Marcus is doing, that's evil. That's a choice." Around 6 p.m., Detective Chen returned to the interview room with another detective, an older man named Roberts. "We have a warrant," Chen said. "We're executing it tonight. We'll be bringing Oliver into protective custody and arresting your brother and sister-in-law." "Patricia, too?" "The evidence suggests she was aware of and potentially facilitated the abuse. At minimum, she failed to protect her child." I thought about Patricia's cold eyes that morning, how quickly she'd threatened me. "She knew," I said. "She absolutely knew. Mr. Morrison, I need to prepare you for what comes next. This is going to be difficult. Your family will be torn apart. Your parents, other relatives, they're all going to have reactions. Some may not believe you. Some may blame you for not acting sooner. I know. Your brother will likely hire expensive lawyers. This could take years to wind through the system. And Oliver, what that child has been through trauma that most people can't imagine. His recovery will be long and painful. I know all of that," I said quietly. "But I also know what happens if nobody acts. If everyone just looks the other way because it's too uncomfortable, too messy, too complicated. That little boy has nobody else fighting for him. So I'll fight, for as long as it takes." Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. "You did the right thing coming to us. Despite the legal complications, you potentially saved that child's life. Abuse patterns escalate. What you found in that basement, it was escalating." The implications of her words made me feel sick. "Can I be there when you get Oliver?" I asked. "No, but I can tell you that we have child welfare specialists who will be handling his immediate care. He'll be examined by doctors, interviewed by forensic specialists trained in working with child victims. We'll do everything we can to minimize additional trauma. He's going to be terrified." "Yes," she agreed, "which is why we need to move quickly and carefully." They arrested Marcus at his office at 8 p.m. According to Detective Chen, he'd been calm, almost eerily so. He'd simply said, "I want my lawyer," and refused to speak further. Patricia was arrested at home. She'd been hysterical, screaming about false accusations and conspiracies. She'd claimed I'd planted evidence, that I was jealous of their perfect family, that this was all a misunderstanding. Oliver had been at a neighbor's house, where Patricia had dropped him off after school. The neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, reported that Oliver had seemed relieved to be there, that he'd asked if he could stay the night. When social workers arrived to take him into emergency care, he'd asked only one question: "Is my daddy coming to get me?" When they'd told him no, he'd started crying. Not from sadness, but from relief. That detail broke something in me. What kind of hell had that child been living in, where being taken by strangers felt safer than going home? The next few weeks were a nightmare. The story broke in the media, prominent financial analysts charged with child sexual abuse. The details that emerged were horrifying. The investigation revealed that Marcus had been abusing Oliver since the child was 3 years old. The soundproofed basement, the hidden camera footage, the meticulously documented files. Everything pointed to a predator who'd been operating in plain sight, protected by the veneer of suburban normalcy. My parents were devastated. My mother refused to believe it at first, kept saying there must be a mistake, that her son couldn't possibly. But the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, she had to face the truth. My father, aged 10 years in 2 weeks. He'd worked his whole life to build a successful family, to raise good sons. Learning that one of those sons was a monster destroyed him. Family dinners became impossible. Phone calls were strained. Some relatives stopped speaking to me, angry that I'd destroyed the family. Others apologized for not seeing the signs, for not doing more. But the worst part was Oliver. I wasn't allowed to see him immediately. He was in foster care, undergoing intensive therapy, being evaluated by specialists. Every day I worried about him, wondered if he felt abandoned, if he blamed himself. It took 6 weeks before the social worker assigned to Oliver's case called me. "Oliver has been asking for you," she said. "His therapist thinks it might be beneficial for him to have contact with a safe family member. Would you be willing to participate in supervised visits?" Would I be willing? I'd have moved mountains to see that kid. The first visit was at a child advocacy center, in a comfortable room designed to feel safe and non-threatening. A therapist named Dr. Patel was there, along with the social worker. When Oliver walked in, my heart broke. He looked smaller somehow, more fragile. His eyes darted around the room nervously, like he was checking for threats. Then he saw me, and his face crumpled. "Uncle James!" He ran to me, and I caught him, holding him tight as he sobbed into my shoulder. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm sorry I told. I'm sorry I'm bad." "No," I said fiercely, pulling back to look at his face. "No, Oliver, you are not bad. You are brave, so incredibly brave. You told the truth, and that's the hardest thing in the world to do." But Daddy said, "Your daddy was wrong. About everything. What he did to you was wrong. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing." Dr. Patel gently interjected. "Oliver, remember what we talked about? About how grown-ups are supposed to protect children, not hurt them?" He nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "Your Uncle James protected you," she continued. "He saw you were hurting, and he did something about it. That's what safe grown-ups do." We spent an hour together that day. We didn't talk much about what had happened. Mostly, I just let him know I was there, that I wasn't going anywhere, that he was safe. As I was leaving, Oliver grabbed my hand. "Uncle James, can I come live with you?" My throat tightened. "I'm working on that, buddy. It's complicated, but I'm trying my hardest." And I was. I'd already started the process to become Oliver's foster parent. It would require background checks, home visits, evaluations. But I'd do whatever it took. The legal process was grueling. Marcus pleaded not guilty, despite the mountain of evidence against him. His lawyers tried every tactic they could think of. They argued that I'd planted evidence, that the photos and videos were fabricated, that Oliver had been coached. But forensic experts proved the evidence was genuine. Child psychologists confirmed that Oliver's testimony had all the hallmarks of true disclosure, not coached statements. Medical examinations corroborated the abuse. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in that courtroom every single day, watching my brother's mask of normalcy crack and crumble. He was a stranger to me now. Maybe he always had been. Patricia had taken a plea deal, testifying against Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. She admitted she'd known about the abuse, that she'd been too afraid to leave, too concerned about maintaining their lifestyle and social standing. She'd chosen financial security over her son's safety. The prosecution brought in expert witnesses who explained grooming, coercion, and the psychology of child abuse. They showed the jury exactly what Marcus had done. the systematic way he'd terrorized his own child. Oliver had to testify. It was the hardest day of my life, watching that little boy sit in a courtroom and describe his nightmare. He was brave beyond measure, answering questions in his small, clear voice. But I could see it was destroying him. The defense attorney tried to rattle him, to poke holes in his testimony. I wanted to leap over the barrier and throttle the man, but Oliver held firm. Dr. Patel had prepared him well. When the jury came back after 2 days of deliberation, I held my breath. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. My mother sobbed. My father sat stone-faced. Marcus showed no emotion at all, just that same eerie calm he'd maintained throughout the trial. At sentencing, the judge was unequivocal. "Mr. Morrison, you are a predator who betrayed the most sacred trust there is. You betrayed your own child." The evidence presented in this case is among the most disturbing I've seen in 30 years on the bench. You documented your crimes meticulously, showing no remorse, no recognition of the profound harm you were causing. She sentenced him to 45 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 30 years. Given his age, it was effectively a life sentence. Patricia received 8 years for child endangerment and failure to protect. The day after sentencing, I got the call I'd been waiting for. My application to be Oliver's foster parent had been approved. I could bring him home. The social worker brought him to my townhouse in Toronto on a gray afternoon in March. He stood on my doorstep with a single backpack containing his belongings and looked up at me with those big gray eyes. "Is this really my home now?" he asked. "If you want it to be," I said. "This is your home, Oliver, for as long as you need it." He stepped inside cautiously, exploring each room like he couldn't quite believe it was real. When he saw the bedroom I'd prepared for him, with a new bed, toys, and books, he started crying again. "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. "Nothing's wrong," he said. I've never had my own room before. Daddy said I had to sleep in the basement so I could be ready when he needed me." I pulled him into a hug, blinking back my own tears. "You never have to be ready for anyone but yourself now. This is your space, your safe space." That first night, Oliver woke up screaming 3 times. Each time, I went to his room, turned on the lights, and reminded him where he was, that he was safe, that nobody was coming to hurt him. "It's going to take time," Dr. Patel had warned me. "Trauma doesn't just disappear because the threat is gone. His brain has been wired to expect danger. Rewiring that takes patience, consistency, and a lot of love." I had all of those things to give. The months that followed were challenging in ways I'd never imagined. Oliver had nightmares, panic attacks, days where he couldn't go to school because his anxiety was too overwhelming. We saw Dr. Patel twice a week. I learned about trauma-informed parenting, about how to create safety without being overprotective. Some days were good. We'd go to the park, or the science center, or just play video games on the couch. Oliver would laugh, really laugh, and I'd see glimpses of the child he'd been before the abuse. Other days were hard. He'd have setbacks, regressions. He'd ask questions about why his father had hurt him, whether he'd somehow deserved it, whether all grown-ups were secretly dangerous. Those questions broke my heart every time. But I answered them honestly, age-appropriately, always reinforcing that none of this was his fault. About 6 months after Oliver came to live with me, something remarkable happened. His school art teacher called to tell me that Oliver had created something he wanted me to see. It was a painting. On one side, dark colors, shadows, a small figure trapped in gray. On the other side, bright colors, a sun, a child playing with an adult figure. In the middle, a bridge connecting the 2 sides. Oliver explained to the class that this is his before and after, the teacher said, her voice thick with emotion. "He said the person on the bright side is you, helping him cross the bridge." That painting is framed in my living room now. It reminds me why I did what I did, why I couldn't look away. A year after Marcus's sentencing, I received a letter. It had been sent to my parents' house and forwarded to me. The return address was the prison where Marcus was being held. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me read it. The letter was brief and chilling in its clinical tone. Marcus wanted me to know that he understood why I'd felt compelled to act, that he bore me no ill will, and that he hoped someday I'd understand the complexity of the situation. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done to Oliver, just that cold, detached language of someone who saw himself as the real victim. I burned the letter. 2 years after that terrible Thanksgiving dinner, Oliver and I were at the courthouse again, but this time it was for a much happier reason. I was formally adopting him. Oliver, now 8 years old, and thriving despite the scars he still carried, stood before the judge with me. He was nervous but excited. "Oliver," the judge said kindly, "do you understand what's happening today?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said clearly. "Uncle James is becoming my forever dad. And is that what you want?" "More than anything." The judge smiled. "Then it's my honor to grant this adoption. James Morrison, you are now the legal father of Oliver Morrison. Congratulations to both of you." Oliver turned and hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "I love you too, son." That night, Oliver asked if he could write a letter, not to his biological father, but to other kids who might be going through what he'd gone through. With Dr. Patel's guidance, we crafted a message that Oliver wanted to share. The local child advocacy center later used it in their educational materials. With Oliver's permission, the letter said, "My name is Oliver, and I'm 8 years old. When I was little, someone I was supposed to trust hurt me really badly. For a long time, I was too scared to tell anyone. I thought it was my fault. I thought nobody would believe me. I thought telling would make everything worse. But then I told my Uncle James, and he believed me. He protected me, and even though things got really hard for a while, telling the truth was the best thing I ever did. If someone is hurting you, please tell a safe grown-up. Tell a teacher. Tell a friend's parent. Tell a doctor or a counselor. Keep telling until someone listens and helps you. You are not bad. You are not to blame. What's happening to you is not your fault, and there are people who will fight for you if you give them the chance. I'm happy now. I'm safe now. And you can be too." The Child Advocacy Center reported that after they started using Oliver's letter in their programs, 3 more children disclosed abuse. 3 more kids who might have suffered in silence found the courage to speak up. Oliver is 13 now. He still has nightmares sometimes, still sees Dr. Patel monthly. The trauma of his early years left marks that may never completely fade. But he's resilient in ways that amaze me every day. He plays hockey, loves science, and wants to be a child psychologist when he grows up. "So I can help other kids like me," he says. Last month, he gave a presentation at his school about recognizing and reporting abuse. His teacher called me afterward to say the entire class had been moved by his courage. Marcus is still in prison. He's filed multiple appeals, all of them denied. I don't think about him often anymore. He's not worth the mental energy. Patricia was released after serving 6 years. She's living in another province, and as far as I know, she's never attempted to contact Oliver. He's better off without her. My parents struggled for years to reconcile their love for their son with the monster he'd become. My mother eventually started volunteering with a support group for families of abuse perpetrators, finding some healing in helping others navigate that impossible grief. My father died 2 years ago. His last words to me were, "Thank you for saving Oliver. You're the son I wish I'd raised." I think about that sometimes, about how easy it would have been to look away that Thanksgiving night, to tell myself I was imagining things, that it wasn't my place to interfere, that family loyalty meant keeping quiet. If I'd made that choice, Oliver would still be in that house, still being hurt, maybe worse. There are thousands of children like Oliver out there right now, children being abused by people they should be able to trust. And there are thousands of potential rescuers, people who see something concerning and have to make a choice. Will you look away because it's uncomfortable, because you don't want to get involved, because you're afraid of being wrong? Or will you be the person who acts? Here's what I learned, and what I want everyone to understand. Trust your instincts. If a child's behavior or words set off alarm bells, investigate. Don't wait for perfect proof before you act. Understand that abuse happens in families that look normal from the outside. Abusers are often charming, successful people who've learned to hide their true nature. Don't let appearances fool you. If a child discloses abuse to you, believe them. Children rarely lie about abuse. The statistics are clear on this. Your belief can be the difference between a child being saved and a child suffering for years more. Learn the signs: sudden behavioral changes, fear of specific people or places, age-inappropriate sexual knowledge, unexplained injuries, regression in behavior. These aren't always indicators of abuse, but they're worth investigating. Report suspected abuse to Child Protective Services, or police. In Canada, many professionals are legally required to report suspicions. But even if you're not a mandatory reporter, you can and should make that call if you believe a child is in danger. Be prepared for the fact that acting might be messy. It might tear families apart. It might make you unpopular. But a child's safety is worth all of that and more. Support survivors. Whether it's a child in foster care or an adult working through childhood trauma, survivors need people who will stand by them through the long, difficult process of healing. Educate yourself and others. Talk to your own children about body safety, appropriate touch, and the importance of telling a trusted adult if someone crosses boundaries. Sometimes I wonder if I acted fast enough. If those few days between Thanksgiving and when I went to that house made a difference. If I'd moved sooner, could I have prevented even one more incident of abuse? Dr. Patel tells me this kind of thinking isn't productive. That I did act quickly, especially considering the psychological barriers to believing a family member could do such things. That I saved Oliver's life, and that's what matters. She's probably right. But I'll always wonder. What I don't wonder about is whether it was worth it. Every time Oliver laughs at something silly, every time he falls asleep feeling safe, every time he tackles a challenge with courage he learned from surviving hell, I know it was worth it. He calls me Dad now, not Uncle James. On my birthday last year, he gave me a card he'd made himself. Inside, he'd written, "Thank you for being brave enough to see me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You're my hero, Dad. I love you." I keep that card in my wallet. On hard days, when I'm struggling with my own guilt about not seeing the signs earlier, about the years Oliver suffered, I read it and remember what Dr. Patel always says. You can't change the past, but you changed his future, and that's everything. If you're reading this, and you're concerned about a child, please act. Don't wait. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Be the person who makes the call, who asks the hard questions, who refuses to look away. You might save a life. You might give a child a future they never thought possible. And years from now, that child might write you a card, thanking you for being brave enough to see them. That's worth everything.